Hello guys, and you're joining me on a quick walk around tour of my personal car. It's a 2001 Renault Sport Clio 172. Quite an unusual car now, particularly in this phase 1 guys. So you can notice the phase 1 cars are quite easily distinguished by these kind of more bulbous lamps. I think it's a more aggressive look than the kind of Clio 172 and the Clio 182s that followed it. This car has been toyed with a little bit over its 23 years now, so it sits a little bit lower, but it is still sat on the original OZ Racing 15-inch wheels, the OZ F1s that these came with. I think it's a really nice combination of kind of wheel to car, and also you just don't see kind of sidewalls like that anymore, not on a hot hatch anyway, of course. Talking about the car in general, the formula was very much built on the successful, well, you think about the Mark 1 Clio, you had the Williams and the 16 valve, which put a pretty large engine in a small car. This built on the same idea, so this is a 2-litre twin cam engine called the F4R, and plonked straight into where you would often find a 1.2. Coming around the rear of the car, you can see that again there's a few things that aren't standard. Somewhere between the kind of 2001 production of this car and today, somebody has fitted quite a large Scorpion exhaust. The sound is obnoxious, just like the look. It's quite a difference from how these came from the factory. They actually had a turned down tip that went behind the bumper, so there was no cutout at all. Can't say I'm mad on it, but actually the sound when you're going for it is awesome. Allow me to demonstrate. Similarly, you've got these press plates on there, which are something that I think they had their day, really, that kind of look, and I probably will swap them out for some more regular plates soon. As I said, the car's a bit lower than standard. It also has an aftermarket anti-roll bar, which you can't easily see unless I get closer. There we go. Yeah, so you can see anodized rear anti-roll bar kind of clamped on underneath there, and then these blue springs, which are, I believe they're by a company called Grams, just make it sit a little bit better without kind of going to the extremes of coilover setup. Under the bonnet you've got Renault's F4R engine. It's a 2-litre 4-cylinder naturally aspirated engine, and you know, for the time gave this car some really good performance. I believe 0 to 60 is in the mid 6 seconds, something like that. But you know, there's a decent chunk of torque in this thing, especially when you consider how little these cars weigh. And so that kind of real world performance is still, you know, you're going to get pasted by modern day hot hatches, but ultimately for the time they went very well indeed. Just show you the interior of these cars, which is something that they got criticised for, they still get criticised for. I think it's part of the appeal, to be honest. Again, sorry, not very clean at the moment, but you can see they had these kind of blue, half leather, half Alcantara seats, kind of Renault Sport logos, and that was a coloured logo on these earlier cars. The steering wheel has been replaced on my car. That's because they like to kind of disintegrate, something that they didn't fix in the later cars either. So you'll find a lot of these phase 1 cars will have a steering wheel from a 1.2 or something like that. Not something that really bothers me. Yeah, metal pedals were standard. These nice white dials, which got up to 170 mile an hour, a little bit keen that. And then you had this kind of aluminium, more alloy gear knob that that never actually, interesting, never had a gear pattern on it. So when these cars were new, they actually used to come with a sticker on the windscreen that explained your kind of the pattern for the gearbox. Mine unfortunately doesn't retain that, and that was lost somewhere some time ago. But yeah, just a quirk of these cars. So what's the little 172 like to drive? Well, I'd sum up the experiences as being delightfully old school. You get the feel, the feedback, and all the character of a car from the 90s. You can have fun within the speed limits. I know it's a cliche, but it's absolutely true. And yes, that super throttle adjustable little chassis is everything you'd want from a little front wheel drive car. One thing you absolutely will come across if you're ever looking to buy one of these, or even just researching one of these, straight away you'll find out that the engines, they require cam belts every, I believe it's every 5 years, 60,000 miles, something like that. You need to do a cam belt change on these. Now, because of the access, when you've got this kind of engine bay that was originally designed for a small engine, you put a 2 litre in there. Doing a belt on one of these is a rather expensive job. And that's partially to do with the way that the engine's timed up. It uses what's called dephaser, another belt-driven component, and ultimately you need to, in 2023, you need to be banking about £1,000 to do that job. At the same time, people will typically do your auxiliary belt, water pump, you know, these sort of things. So yeah, you bank about £1,000 to get that done. If you fail to do that maintenance, they do tend to snap. Even the auxiliary belt snapping can take out your cam belt, and that's obviously catastrophic for the engine, and probably would see one of these end up in the scrap yards. Is the Clio 172 a reliable car? Well, yes and no, I would say. They are littered with faults, they really are. But they're small, niggly little things. The mechanicals of these are actually pretty robust. And so, actually, you know, there's some really good online help. So if you do have a problem with one of these cars, 99% of the time, it will have happened before. And there's some amazing Facebook groups, the cliosport.net forum, where people have taken the time to walk other people through the fixes with these cars. What is a much bigger problem, actually, is parts availability on these Phase 1 cars. So there were little strange differences between these and later cars. As I've mentioned, you know, aesthetically, you've got the kind of different front end, but mechanically, there are quite a lot of differences too. And so right down to the fact that this car has a cable throttle, with all the Phase 2 cars being drive-by-wire. And so that means that a part as simple as a throttle cable, if you were going to try and get an OEM one from Renault, absolutely not. You're going to have to either find a very expensive used one, or you're going to have to come up with a solution yourself, kind of a universal cable or something like that. And there are countless examples of these kind of parts issues nowadays with these cars. And so that means that if you come up against that situation, there are some specific breakers, Facebook and things like this, that are incredibly useful for that sort of thing. But actually, yes, it's just something to be aware of before you purchase one of these, or if you are thinking of purchasing one of these Phase 2 cars, you just won't have that difficulty. So if you're looking out for one of these, what should you be looking for? Well, the rear arches and sills are probably their Achilles heel. It's very common to see quite serious rust around the rear jacking points, so make sure you have a good look underneath, and you want to really see an example that either isn't showing rust there or has been adequately repaired. You can actually remove the inner door cards at the back of the car to have a good look inside that panel. As I mentioned earlier in the video, it's really important that you get an example that has either had the belts done recently with proof, and ideally at a specialist, or you go out there and you bargain with that factor. So you need to be saying to somebody, to the potential seller, it will absolutely cost you £1,000 to get this job done at a specialist. So it can be a good way to bargain for one of these, but yeah, be aware it's never really going to be a cheap job. If you're looking for a fairly practical car that can easily be a daily driver, doesn't have particularly high running costs, is interesting and incredibly fun to drive, then the Clio 172 should definitely make your shortlist.